They said the Wild West was built on courage. That was a lie. It was built on blood, on fear, and on stories that ended before sunrise. This is one of those stories. A story of love that was never meant to exist. A story of a man born into violence, and a woman raised to believe in the law. If their love had stayed hidden, they might have survived. But in the Wild West, nothing stays hidden for long. The town was called Red Creek. It wasn't marked clearly on most maps. Just a small stain of wooden buildings, dust-filled streets, and crooked saloons, pressed between the desert and the mountains. People didn't come to Red Creek to build a future. They came to escape their past. Every evening, as the sun melted into the sand, doors closed. Windows were locked. Guns were loaded. Because sunset belonged to outlaws. And among them, one name was spoken only in whispers. Jack Crow. Jack Crow was not born a criminal. He was born to a drunk father and a silent mother on a dying ranch in Texas. By the age of 10, he had learned three things: how to ride fast, how to shoot straight, and how to run. When his father was killed in a land dispute that the law never bothered to investigate, Jack learned a fourth lesson. Justice was not free. It was sold. By 16, Jack Crow had blood on his hands, not because he wanted it there, but because survival demanded it. By 25, his name was written on wanted posters across 3 states. Dead or alive. Most preferred dead. Jack didn't rob for gold. He robbed for time. Time to stay ahead of the rope. Time to outrun the law. Time to keep breathing one more day. Red Creek was never meant to be a stop. But fate has a cruel sense of humor. On the night everything changed, the wind screamed through the desert like a warning. Jack rode alone, wounded from a job gone wrong. A bullet had torn through his side, not fatal, but deep enough to slow him. Blood soaked into his shirt as he slipped from his horse near the edge of town. That's where he collapsed. Not in the middle of the street. Not in front of the sheriff's office. But behind an old barn, forgotten, abandoned, and falling apart. Jack expected death. Instead, he heard footsteps. Emily Hale had never seen an outlaw up close. She had heard the stories every girl in Red Creek had. Men with black hats, cold eyes, hands faster than regret. Emily was the sheriff's daughter. She had been raised on rules, prayer, and the belief that the law protected the innocent. That night, she had only stepped outside to check on the horses. And then she saw him. A man bleeding in the dirt, a revolver still clutched in his hand, breathing but barely. She should have screamed. She should have run. She should have called her father. But she didn't. Jack opened his eyes and reached for his gun. Emily didn't move. Her voice was calm, shaking, but calm. "You're dying," she said. "If I wanted you dead, I'd already be screaming." Jack stared at her. Not fear, not hatred, just humanity. And in the Wild West, that was rare. Emily hid him. She dragged him into the barn with strength she didn't know she had. She cleaned his wound with shaking hands. She prayed he wouldn't die before morning. Every second felt like betrayal. To her father, to the law, to everything she believed. But when Jack whispered, barely conscious, "Please don't let them hang me," something inside her broke. By dawn, Red Creek woke up like always. The sheriff walked the streets. The saloon opened its doors, and new wanted posters were nailed to the walls. Jack Crow's face stared back at the town. Emily saw it, and for the first time in her life, the law looked cruel. She returned to the barn that night, then again the next, and slowly, against reason, against fear, against fate, the outlaw lived. And the sheriff's daughter began to fall in love with the one man she was never supposed to save. But love in the Wild West is never quiet, and the desert remembers every footprint. Night after night, Emily brought food to the barn. It started with bread and water, then blankets, then words. Jack told her stories she had never imagined. Stories of the road, the desert, the lawless towns, and the men who had tried to take him down. And Emily, who had spent her life obeying rules and reading letters from absent fathers, listened. Slowly, impossibly, she began to see the man behind the wanted poster. Jack was not a monster. Not entirely. He was a man shaped by violence, yes, but also by love he had never known. He laughed sometimes, a sharp, dangerous laugh that made her heart race. At first, it frightened her. Then it comforted her. The barn became their world. No townsfolk. No law. Just two souls suspended between fear and desire. Days passed. Emily's father, Sheriff Hale, grew restless. He noticed footprints in the dust near the old barn. He noticed the missing horse tied behind the general store. He noticed Emily's eyes, more distant, more secretive. And the sheriff had learned, long ago, that the desert never hides mistakes. Meanwhile, Jack's wound healed, but the world outside the barn was closing in. One evening, as the sun dipped blood-red over the desert, Jack spoke quietly. "I shouldn't have let you see me like this," he said. "You're in danger now. If anyone finds out you could die." Emily's hand touched his arm. "You're worth the risk," she whispered. "Even if it kills me, I'll stay." Jack studied her. For the first time in years, he didn't see survival. He saw trust and love. But love in Red Creek was fragile. The town whispered. Men who had crossed Jack before began showing up in the streets. Bounties increased. The sheriff grew suspicious. And then betrayal arrived. It came from a man named Tommy Briggs, a gunslinger who had once ridden with Jack. Tommy had been a friend once, a companion in robbery and escape. But greed had twisted him, and when he learned Jack was hiding in Red Creek, he saw an opportunity. He confronted Emily one night as she returned from the barn. "Your friend," Tommy said, "ice cold and calculating. He owes me. And if he doesn't pay, you'll suffer." Emily didn't scream. She didn't run. She only clenched her fists and stared him down. But Tommy knew fear when he saw it. And he left a warning. That night, the wind carried more than dust. It carried whispers of betrayal. Footsteps outside the barn. A shadow moving across the window. A revolver cocked. Jack awoke. Emily's face was pale, but determined. "They know," she said. "They are coming. Tonight." Jack's eyes darkened. He had fought men before, yes, but never for love. I moonlight, they prepared. Barrels of old hay stacked for cover. Broken planks for barricades. A single lantern flickering. And then the first shots rang out. Tommy and his men charged. Emily watched, heart hammering, as Jack moved like the wind. Every shot precise. Every movement deadly. But the numbers were too many. And in the chaos, Emily realized something terrifying. Even if they survived tonight, Red Creek would never forgive them. The sheriff would never forgive her. And their love, fragile as it was, would become a curse. Hours passed. When the dust settled, Tommy was gone. Jack was wounded again, this time deeper. Emily tended to him, shaking, whispering, tears burning her cheeks. "I told you," she said softly, "that it's worth it." Jack smiled weakly. "The desert doesn't care," he murmured. "But you make it bearable." And for a moment, against the odds, they believed they could survive. But Red Creek never forgets. The sheriff had seen the footprints. The townsfolk had seen the shadows. And the Wild West always collects its debts. The first light of dawn revealed Red Creek like a town caught between yesterday and tomorrow. Jack Crow and Emily Hale had to leave. Every heartbeat was a countdown. Every shadow could hide a gun. Every whisper could be betrayal. The sheriff, relentless and sharp-eyed, had pieced together the trail. Red Creek had never seen a man run so fast or a woman follow so courageously. They mounted 2 horses stolen quietly from the general store stables. Jack, bleeding but steady, held the reins with one hand, a revolver in the other. Emily clutched a small satchel, her few belongings, a knife, and her faith that they could survive. The desert awaited. A landscape of dust, rocks, and death. The sheriff's posse caught the first glimpse of them by noon. After them, he shouted, his voice cutting across the plains like a whip. The chase began. Jack urged the horse faster. Emily leaned low, the wind ripping through her hair. The horses galloped across the jagged terrain, hoofs pounding like drums of war. Bullets whistled around them. Shouts echoed. And the sun, scorching and merciless, beat down as if the desert itself conspired against them. They paused only once, near a dry creek, the horses snorting and trembling. Jack examined his wound. Deep now. Too deep for another day. Emily, he said, voice strained, I can't go much further. We need a plan. Emily, stubborn as she was brave, nodded. I know, but we'll make it, somehow. Jack smiled faintly. You make everything seem possible. She looked away, afraid to see the pain etched in his face. By nightfall, they had crossed the first ridge. The sheriff's posse was closing in, but Jack was cunning. He led them through narrow canyons and over cliffs where horses feared to tread. But the desert is patient, and the law even more so. 2 days into the escape, betrayal struck again. A man they had helped weeks before appeared from the shadows, the bounty hunter named Silas Crow. He was silent, deadly, and hungry for reward. Jack recognized him immediately. Silas, he muttered, I should have known. Silas didn't speak. He only aimed. Emily screamed as shots rang out. Jack dove, rolling behind a boulder. Emily's horse bolted. Heart pounding, Jack fired back. Silas fell, wounded but not defeated. And in that moment, Jack realized the truth he had been running from. No matter how far they went, the Wild West always caught up. That night, under a sky lit by a million indifferent stars, Jack and Emily camped in a canyon. Emily bandaged Jack's wounds with trembling hands. I can't lose you, she whispered. You promised we'd survive. Jack's hand held hers weakly. Survival, he said softly, is never promised. Only moments. Moments we steal from the world. Emily didn't argue. She only held on tighter, as if her love could shield them both from fate itself. But fate has no mercy. By the third day, the sheriff had cut them off. He had predicted Jack's route, anticipated every move. They were trapped in a narrow canyon, the walls rising like judges in the courtroom of death. Jack stood in front of Emily, the canyon echoing with the footsteps of the posse, gun in hand, every muscle tense. Emily, he said, voice low, I need you to run. Don't look back. She shook her head. Not without you. Jack's eyes softened. You have to. If they catch you, they'll kill me anyway, and they won't stop until one of us is dead. The posse arrived. The sheriff himself rode at the front, ice cold, determined. Jack fired. Shots cracked through the canyon. Dust rose. Horses screamed. Emily ran, tears streaming, her heart split between love and survival. Jack turned back. He knew this was the end. And as the sun set, bleeding red across the canyon walls, Jack Crow faced the law. Emily's cries echoed behind him. The desert watched silently. The Wild West claimed another story as it always does. The canyon echoed with the sound of gunfire, a symphony of death and inevitability. Jack Crow stood alone. The sheriff's posse closed in. Dust swirled around him, burning eyes and throat alike. He glanced back once. Emily was running, tears streaming, her dress ripped, her hair tangled with the wind. Her eyes met his, pleading, fearful, loving. Jack knew he could not run. Not anymore. The sheriff raised his rifle, steady, unflinching. Jack Crow, he shouted. Drop your weapon. Jack's fingers tightened around the revolver. He fired once, not at them, but at the canyon wall, a warning. Then he dropped the gun. Emily reached the top of the ridge, gasping, desperate. She looked down. Jack was kneeling in the dust. The sheriff advanced. One of the deputies fired. The bullet struck Jack in the chest. He stumbled forward, arms flailing, then fell to his knees. The desert floor drank the blood of the outlaw. Jack turned his head toward Emily. "Aye," he whispered, voice broken, yet full of love. "You made me human." Tears blurred her vision. "I love you," she cried, "but I can't save you." Jack smiled weakly. "Then lie for both of us." And with that, he exhaled one last time. The sun dipped behind the mountains, casting long shadows over a broken outlaw. Emily collapsed beside him. The sheriff arrived, rifle still raised, but silent at the sight. He looked at his daughter, trembling, and at the man who had defied everything. Jack Crow, outlaw, rogue, lover gone. Emily held him close, feeling the warmth fade, knowing the Wild West had claimed its due. Days later, Emily left Red Creek. She carried nothing but a small satchel, a faded scarf Jack had worn, and the memory of his words. She walked into the desert, free yet haunted. The town whispered. The sheriff mourned privately. The desert remained indifferent. But legends never died. Years later, travelers spoke of Red Creek. They spoke of a man who rode fast, loved fiercely, and died bravely, and of a woman who defied law and fear for the man she loved. Somewhere beyond the mountains, where the sun burns the sand and the wind whispers secrets, their love remained. A love that the Wild West could never kill.